not to beleaguer this a little bit, but you got to come to grips with something. The Army says mission command. And I don't, forgive me, I don't know what the climate is in the UK military right now. But in the U.S. Army, we say mission command, right? We have the 6 principles that all of you could just spout off just right off the bat with no problem at all. But do we practice mission command actually doing it? Okay, so we're going to come through now. I mean, what I'm going to show you here, what I want to accomplish in the Battle of Königgrätz is this is going to be a case study in mission command. And what I want you to understand about this is the context behind it. And as you wrestle with the idea that if mission command is where we want to go, if we all agree that that is the ideal situation that you want to operate in as a combat leader, but that's not what we're finding ourselves in. Why is that? And then this will be a really good example of not only mission command, but also of some key takeaway of how someone broke all the rules and won anyway. Okay, so I'm going to provide you some context, because context is everything, and help you understand why I chose the Battle of Königgrätz to really key in as an organization. Okay, so here's the Battle of Königgrätz gives you an opportunity to really study mission command in depth, in a practical example rather than theoretical. Instead of saying, okay, hey, it's wonderful if we do it this way, it's amazing, we should all be trustworthy and have shared understanding and all that, and be theoretical about it. This is going to give you an exact concrete example. But we're going to use the Prussians and their leadership methodology because they pioneered this kind of leadership philosophy. I'm going to show you how it came about. It just didn't come about an example. But then at the end of this, it's your responsibility to change a military culture. Okay? All right. Here's my references. Okay. So there's the word we're going to use in here, you're going to hear a lot, is the word Offstrog tactique. Now, I'm not a German language expert. What I hear experts say, it means mission orders. The literal translation means mission orders. But it's a philosophy. It's more than that. It is a way of thinking. It's a style of leadership. Okay? So the term Offstrog tactique is a German word. It means literally translated mission orders. Okay, so what you're looking at is the Prussian-Austrian 6 Weeks War in June and July 1866. There's a lot of reasons why people win or lose, but this is going to talk about the Prussians win over superior leadership style. Okay, it is the ideal. It stands out as the Germans are always searching, or the Prussians are always searching for the ideal battle, which was the big decisive battle, right? One big battle decides it all, not these long, drawn-out things, and I'll kind of describe why. But this was the example. They do it. They've always sought out for this, big one decisive punch that ends the whole thing, and they pull it off. So this is their moment. Okay, but what happens are these leadership reforms, I want you to this just didn't happen overnight. This happened over years and years, and after a humiliating defeat. They realized something had to change. The world had changed, warfare had changed, and they decided they had to change. And then their key reform really wasn't weaponry, wasn't a lot of things, even though people say technology, but really it was this leadership philosophy. Okay, so the genesis. All right, we got to back up just a little bit. I asked a couple people who Frederick the Great is. Okay, you have to go back that far, and those that are going on the staff ride, they're going to start you in Prague because you have to understand Frederick the Great. Now, I'm not going to do a big history lesson, but the so what of Frederick the Great is he won a lot of battles throughout the whole 7 Years' War, and he was always outnumbered. And he had this thing that he realized that the way he would win is this idea, he called it, I'm not going to say it in German, quick and lively. They had to fight quick and lively because Germany has no borders, Prussia didn't have any borders, meaning there's no mountains, there's no big oceans, nothing keeps the bad guys in and out. So he developed kind of this methodology where he would fight quite, quote, quick and lively battles. right? Everything had to be fast. And he would just march his people back and forth and on and on and on and on. What that developed was this kind of, as people kind of would study Frederick the Great and what they did, they developed this idea that he won because he was just fast. And he could move fast. And he would march a long ways. And he really treasured officers that were disciplined, would take initiative. So Frederick the Great, if you forget everything else about him, what I want you to key into is Frederick the Great was kind of where the genesis of this German military leadership philosophy of being fast and lively, quick and lively. Everything had to be done fast because they didn't have the people, they didn't have the resources to fight long, drawn-out wars. Everything had to be done right now. Okay, so in the after the 7 Years' War, Europe kind of felt the Prussians were the major league, the varsity of the army, right? They had the greatest uniforms. They had proven themselves the greatest infantry. They were kind of the standard, super disciplined, on and on. I mean, who did George Washington go get to bring discipline into the Continental Army? Who did he get? Von Steuben, who was a Prussian, right? He goes, finds that guy because he's like, that guy wins a lot. Because remember, what's his mental model? Who's been winning in the European wars? The Prussians. So George Washington goes, finds a Prussian, gets him out there in front of his Continentals, and it's like, make them into an army, make them into the Prussian army, because that's kind of was the gold standard as far as armies. Okay, so what's important to understand, though, it all changes in 1806 at a battle called Jena Auerstadt. This is a battle you really ought to know. You ought to write it down. You ought to Wikipedia it. You ought to study it. This is a watershed event in history. Why this is a watershed event in history? Because it humiliates the Prussians. Now, I like that word humiliate because I want you to think for a moment. Think of just a moment in your life. Think of a moment in your life where you've been humiliated. Like seriously humiliated. I bet you can ever think of an example. And I bet you never forgot it. As an organization, the Prussian military was humiliated. They thought they were so high up here, and in fact, they were destroyed in basically one day. Napoleon doesn't just destroy the Prussian army, he annihilates it. He does not stop for 3 weeks and pursues and pursues and pursues and pursues the Prussian army until they really just cease to exist. One of the guys who gets captured during this is a guy by the name of Karl von Clausewitz. And he's very upset by what happened. Right? And the Prussian army after that ceases to exist. So how in one moment you go to being the gold standard of what is hey, these are the greatest army in the Europe, and then you just cease to exist. So super humiliating to them. Okay, so these three guys are credited. A guy by the name of Scharnhorst, Gneisenau, and Clausewitz. These three folks are credited for being the key reformers. So they take a big, hard look after the Battle of Jena Auerstadt, and they try to figure out why they lost. There's all kind of things. They come up with, Napoleon was a military genius. They come up with, their leaders were too old, too fat, on and on and on and on. But when the end, they start realizing that they believe in the decisive battle, and they start believing, and this guy especially writes a big long book called On War, where his entire, he says a lot of things, but one of the key things that kind of come from it is war it's about human, it's about probability, it's about chance, on and on and on and on, right? And because of that, you have to change your leadership philosophy, right? And because of that, war is really at its core uncertain. It's full of fog, fear, friction, and fatigue, as we've talked about. You have to change the way you command something. You have to change the command structure. Instead, it has to go from initiative to decisiveness, and creativity has to become the way. Because patterns don't work anymore. Or not more, they never work. It's against the, it's against what war has always meant, because war is always a human endeavor. And I'll give you an example, meaning that you can't predict the outcome. Because once you inject violence into something, you lose control of it. For example, I come to your house and I shoot your daughter. Do I have any idea how you're going to react? Oh, there's probabilities, but you're right, you could react all kinds of ways. And once you start killing people, you start injecting violence, the range of possibilities expand, because humans are complicated. They'll just start doing things and you can't predict them. Anyway, so now what's important to understand, this didn't happen overnight, because there was a lot of friction to this. Because you had nobles and you had high-end people and subordinates. I mean, one of the key things you worried about in those days when you gave soldiers guns is what? Where did the soldiers come from? Did they volunteer? Well, they found them at a bar, right? They conscripted, they grabbed them and took them out. You're in the army now. So what did why did they give these guys really colorful uniforms? So you could see if they run off, right? They just run away. And you have to oh, there they go, my red coat, it's over there. Or, there's my green coats or whatever, Remember, it's smoky and stuff. These guys aren't most of them aren't there because they truly like to be there. I mean, why did the NCO with the sword walk behind the formation? Prods them along, right? Keep going. On and on and on. So it's a very different way of thinking, something that is revolutionary, but it didn't happen overnight. Okay, so Jena Auerstadt is a big watershed event for the Prussians. Fair? Okay, insert this dude. So this is Helmuth von Moltke. I had no idea who this dude was until I went to school a few years ago. I started reading this guy, and I was like, who is this dude? So this guy's kind of an interesting guy. So he was part of the German General Staff, never commanded a large formation in his career. He might have commanded a platoon, but never been a battalion commander, never been a brigade commander, never been a division commander. He went to the General German Staff, and he goes and spends some time down in Turkey as an advisor during the Turkish-Russian War. So think about it for just a moment. He's now going to be inserted into, let me back up. Before he gets into that, here's kind of his beliefs that he had as he developed years and years. And at 66, he's going to be given the top spot in the German army. So what he comes up with, and kind of he's the pioneer in this, maybe not the pioneer, but he's the one that really matures the concept of Offstrog tactique. Number one, so he sees no certainty in war, and he prepares his commanders to cope with friction and uncertainty. He sees that there's nothing is certain, that any kind of pattern or any kind of formula won't work. He believes that commanders should act according to their instincts instead of wait around for someone to tell them what to do. Now remember, this is theoretical, folks, because the Prussians won't fight another war from 1806 all the way to 1865. So for all that time, this is just all done on, this is all theoretical. His key principle was to devise short mission orders, a clear order, and then he leaves the method up to the subordinate. This has never been happened before. I mean, maybe it has happened before, but I mean not in a philosophy like this. He believes conveying the why is far more important than the how. His basic rule is the higher the command, the shorter the order. And every time it takes a stop now, you add the detail, you add detail, you add detail. So a big, a higher order should be quite, find the enemy and destroy them. And then it goes down to the brigade. Okay, we're going to go in there, da-da-da-da. And then it gets down to your squad leader who's given quite detailed orders because he's doing a lot of detailed planning. Such leadership required a thinking leader, because now the days of someone being prod along by a sword were over, because in order to do this, people are having to make judgments on their own. He's also the one, he gives my favorite definition of strategy, which is strategy is a system of expedients. He's also one that kind of coined the phrase, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So that's kind of where that comes from. Or Mike Tyson's, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. That's all kind of, that whole vein kind of goes to this guy. Okay, so insert now. This is who it is. All right. So insert now, 1866. I'm not going to go too far into what the battle was fought over. So what is Germany at this time is full of all these Confederate, like little Confederate states, right? It's not one big Germany. You have Prussia way up here, and all these are like different provinces. They speak German, and they're not unified. So Germany, with Bismarck and some other people, they kind of go on this diplomatic / use of violence method to unify Germany. So that's kind of what brings about this. They just get done fighting a short and lively war with Denmark. And the Germans, and actually the Germans and Austrians are buddies. They cooperate with one another and just crush Denmark. A year later, Bismarck starts negotiating, trying to get some of these other German Confederate states to join with them, and they balk and they don't want to, and it leads to a war between Austria and Germany. That's what's important to know. Now, let me set the stage for the two prize fighters. All right, so in this corner, you've got Austria. Austria just come off getting beat by the Italians in a big battle. It's like starts with an S, I can't remember. They learn a lot, because remember, if you've just been fighting wars, you're kind of getting better at it. They are considered the best cavalry and artillery in Europe. Very expensive. Their commander, a guy by the name of Benedict. He's been a commander a long time, commanded a lot of battles. He's, super experienced, right? All right. They're going to stage out of Vienna. On the other side, you got the Prussians. The Prussians really haven't, now they did fight a battle up in Denmark with the Austrians. It was short, kind of a little bloody. But again, other than that, they have not fought a big battle since 1806. Most people view them as kind of a has-been. Kind of, maybe think of your football team that, used to be good, but, isn't good anymore. Their commanders are who? In fact, there's a story about Moltke that he'll give an order to corps commander, and the corps commander answers like, sure, I'll do it, but who the hell's Moltke? Like, he doesn't even know, that's how, no-name this dude is, right? They know they don't have very good artillery, not as good as the Austrians. Their cavalry is not quite as good. But they have one thing that they have that's they have a couple things they have a little bit better. First is the Germans have developed the needle gun, which is important about that is you can breech load it. So what's important is then you can be in the prone and reload, versus your opponent has to be standing up and load down the barrel like that. Big difference. Next thing is the Prussians have kind of done. Well, before I go that again, let me talk about Moltke. So again, going back to Moltke, no-name leader, never commanded before a big organization like that. A lot of their corps commanders and their army commanders, they're not there on merit. Who decides who they're, why are they commanding? I mean, you'll see, it's the king's son, right? He gets that command. The king's nephew gets the other army's command. And another kind of nephew gets the other one. I mean, you know what I mean? It's not like these dudes are super amazing. That's who's the lineup. Now, when you look on paper, who should win this battle? Oh yeah, and then you're going to see how they're going to fight it. Okay, but let's just talk more about technology. So the Prussians, what they really do is Moltke starts thinking of this new idea, something that really, because he sends observers to watch the Civil War. What does he see that happens in Civil War that's key in Civil War fighting? Railroads. If you want to know where all the Civil War battles go, just follow the railroads, because the whole Civil War is fought over railroads, right? So if you want to I wonder why they fought that battle, find the railroad. Well, that's why they fought it, right? Because otherwise, once you get away from the railroads, everything's moved by the power of muscle. Okay. So he starts seeing railroads, that they're the future, and they can deploy armies fast, okay? The next thing he's going to do, so they really take advantage of it, they start taking care of the telegraph. They see the telegraph as a big thing with the Civil War. I mean, Lincoln would spend all those days just sitting by the telegraph. You now actually have real-time communication. All right? But here's the situation. So here you have Königgrätz in the center. Here is Vienna. Up here is Berlin. And these are these mountains. So at the beginning of the battle, not to beleaguer this too much, but understand that Moltke realizes it's a race. Those of you who did rifle focus, these are mountain passes. What do they kind of look like? Like crossing points, right? Crossing point 1, crossing point 2, crossing point 3. Moltke realized that he has these crossing points, and whoever can control the crossing points first will probably have a huge advantage, and he can do that through railroads. Benedict realizes he's going to move up north, and he's going to, because he only has one railroad, he's going to move up north, and he's going to lose the battle of the crossing points. But that's okay, because in those days, an unbreakable rule was this thing called interior versus exterior lines. He feels like if he feels like he loses the battle for the crossing points, he knows they're going to come through the mountain passes, probably not all at the same time because of fog, fear, friction, fatigue. They'll come, and he can then mass everybody against one, destroy them, mass everybody against another, and destroy them. They call that defeating someone in piecemeal. Okay? Anyway, where you're setting up right now, and you'll see this, is at the beginning of the battle, each other did not know where each other was. And each other had to go find themselves and then fight the battle. Okay. Does everyone understand how it's kind of set up? Okay. I kind of just went all over this a little bit. Okay, so this is how it's kind of set up. When they get to the battle, again, the Germans arrive, or the Prussians arrive not at the same time. As you saw earlier, let me go back. Got to get ahead of myself. Oops. The Prussians divide up into 3 armies. Who's outnumbers? Who has more people? Did you catch the numbers? The Austrians have more people. So Moltke already breaks one rule. Are you up to that point? Do you ever break yourself up when you're facing larger numbers? Rule number 1 broken. Number 2, then he goes to these mountain passes. These are like 200 miles apart from here to here. Is there any telegraphs that's going to go over there? No. Is there any thought that this army can coordinate with that army? There's going to be no coordination. Besides, he's going to be operating again on exterior lines, and then these mountains are going to keep it, so it's going to be hard to mutually support one another until you all come through this mountain pass. Next, does he have any idea where the Austrians really are? He has no idea. And these commanders, for reasons I'm still not unsure, who does your reconnaissance for you? What element do you usually send them out? Come on, Cody. A cavalry. Where do these guys put their cavalry at? They put it behind them. I don't know why. They're like the last thing I'll have to figure out, but none of them do it. And so all these guys are leading with their chin, just going right through the mountain passes, leading with their chin. Simultaneously, here comes the Austrians, all moving in one group. And they get to where they don't know where each other are. And there's a few, engagement battles, whatever, but it all seems to collide right at Königgrätz. Okay, so what's going to happen during the battle? Here's the Elbe army, here's the Prussian First Army, here's the Second Army. Out there's a river. I can't remember the name of the river, but it's right in front, and there's the Elbe River behind them. Benedict is going to get his forces, and they're going to push past across to the other side of the river and set up. They own the high ground. There's a hill called Clum Hill, and these forests right here. And this Clum Hill is right here. I haven't been there personally, so I'm excited to see when you go down the staff ride. You're going to actually stand on it and see what it looks like, see the dominating terrain, but I'm going off what I've read. It is the dominant terrain feature. If you own that hill, you're going to own it. Benedict knows that he's got forces coming at him from 3 different angles. And they're not coming at the same time. Now, here's the difference, though. And I'm not going to go through all of this because I don't have time. But what I want to take from this is there's 2 different styles of command going on. All these different operations are occurring, and who's calling all the shots most of the time? So something goes here, they go back to Benedict, has to come back to give an order. And it's going back and forth, and he's going through his staff. Who is the Elbe army commander? It's like, I can't say his name, it's kind of hard to pronounce, it starts with H. Who's telling him what to do? Where's Moltke at? Moltke's somewhere up in here. Moltke is not telling the first commander, the first army commander, the second Prussian army, or the army of the Elbe commander, he's not directing them. Their mission was go find the enemy. Whoever finds them, one element's going to fix them, and the other element's going to come behind and envelop them. Who does it? Whoever gets there first, I guess. And that's kind of the whole plan. So what happens is the Elbe army gets there first. Because in that leadership philosophy, what is prized in the Prussian army? Initiative. So these guys start attacking, and they start attacking, and they start attacking, and they start attacking. And they start trying to turn the flank. But again, as this is happening, Benedict is able to reinforce, and he's got all the high ground. Then the first army shows up. And this commander shows up, and he realizes, I don't have the high ground. I've got to take the high ground. So he sends up his infantry, and they try to charge, and they seize, and they get in this big battle right here along the hilltops of Cologne. And what I think is crazy when you read the story is the Austrians come up there, and they set up their artillery, and they start blasting the Prussians in this fort and just obliterating them. And for some reason, they launch an attack down on the forests. So the Austrians come down off the high ground and meet the infantry in these forests, and they get in a big gunfight. Well, who starts slaughtering who in that gunfight? The Prussians just start slaughtering the Austrians because now it's a different fight now, because now their artillery is not effective, and they're shooting each other, or so on. And the Prussians are able to use their breech loaders and just start annihilating. So now the Austrians pull back, but they're still in the same position up here, and they're just blasting out everybody. And this is the moment where the king comes up, and this is my favorite quote of the book, and that's why I read it. I was like, holy. Anyway, I was impressed. The king comes up, and he sees his army being, at this moment, the Prussian army are at almost catastrophe. They're all dying. I mean, they're not all dying, but you know what I mean? They're really taking it on the chin. And the king turns to Moltke, and he goes, what have you done? You've destroyed my whole army. I gave it to you, and you've I'm paraphrasing, but you've destroyed them all. Bismarck was there. Now imagine you sitting there, right? You're a new commander. You've never commanded anything like this before. Imagine, I mean, these are lives. This is the nation's treasure. Everything's banked on this one operation, and you're in charge of it. And the king looks at you, president, whatever, and says, well done. You just effed this all up. You've destroyed it all. Apparently, the story is Moltke took out a cigar, lit it, and he said, Your Majesty, by the end of the day, not only are you going to have won the battle, but you're going to be you're getting your breakfast in Vienna. You're going to win the whole campaign. I remember reading that going, holy, what? And he goes, watch what's going to happen, basically. At this moment, Benedict thinks all his staff officers the Austrians run to Benedict, and they says, here's your moment, you can win it all. Commit your reserve, launch your cavalry right here, and destroy this army. You've won it all. But Benedict is like, I don't know, that second army, it's coming somewhere. It's coming somewhere. He doesn't want to commit his because he knows somewhere these guys are coming. These dudes right here, they see an opportunity, and of their own accord, they move up, and they start fighting up on Clum Hill. About 1 hour after this, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just when it looks like the Prussians have lost it all, the advance guard of the Second Army shows up and is coming right behind the flank of the Russian army the Austrian army. And what happens? What happens? They fear they're getting circled. They see they're getting enveloped. And a sheer moment of just, oh my goodness, the Austrians realize, and it's a little more complicated than that, and they try to fight it out. But the second army just comes down and starts to envelop them. And Benedict realized that moment he's lost and he's going to lose everybody. And he calls the retreat. And they all start turning and run. Remember, there's only one bridge right there. And they're all trying to get across the bridge. And now all the Prussians are now all working together, hitting them on three sides. And the Austrians are trying to flee for their life. And as they try to get across the bridge and all that, anyway, to bring you'll get more into it as you go. In one moment, the Prussians deal the Austrians a decisive blow. The Austrians cannot recover. Benedict calls the king, or sends a message to the king, I've lost the army, throws in his resignation, and if he wanted to, the king of Prussia could have rode down into Vienna and had breakfast the next morning, as Moltke had predicted. So, okay. So, the results of the Battle of Königgrätz. The Austrian army is annihilated, and they sue for peace. Moltke's flexible maneuvering of his armies, they bring a victory, but he becomes like the hero. Everybody who's everybody knows Moltke's name after this day. Everybody wants to be like him. He's like this national hero. He becomes a world hero. Armies start trying to wear German helmets. They want the pointy helmets. They want the needle gun. Everybody's trying to mimic, just like, any football team, NFL football team, when they win, they start mimicking. Immediately after, they go into the Franco-Prussian War, and they beat the French in 70-71, annihilate them in like 6 weeks as well. And what happened is once this occurs, that theoretical Offstrog tactique puts it into concrete, which once was, hey, this is a theory, it proves to them that this is the way it's done. Okay? Okay. So off to your left, you're going to see German. This is Offstrog tactique. Take a minute and read it. And off to your right is mission command. If you can see back there. You're okay back there, Badger? Who sees big differences? Pretty simple. But why don't we do it? So here I'm going to describe kind of what I think is the difference. So off to the left is Offstrog tactique came about by a military disaster. And it evolved to meet the realities of the German geopolitical situation. They realized they needed officers, they needed mechanism, they needed people to think fast. They had to be quick and lively. There was no moat like the United States enjoys, and so much kind of like the UK. That English channels helped you out a lot. We don't have to. The U.S. doesn't have to fight quick and lively wars, do we? We have time because we've usually had a moat that surrounds, that gives us time before we can build our combat power. Germany and Prussia didn't have that luxury. At any moment, much like we're here in Poland, someone can come pouring over the border at any moment. After World War I, the Germany embraced innovation, learning, and adaptability. And we've talked a lot about that, what happened in World War I with the stormtroops, and they lost again, so now they learn better. After World War II, the U.S. embraced corporate ideas, efficiency, and resource management. Because after World War II, what lesson did the U.S. arguably learned? What wins wars? Logistics wins war. What else? The bigger the bomb, the better. Right? The atom bomb. In Prussia and Germany, Offstrog tactique exemplifies a complete military culture. In 1980, we pursues mission command, but we can't shed our preferred style of cultural change. Folks, this took 130 years for that to be internalized. What makes us think that we can just do it overnight? And we haven't had near the visceral experience that they did to get there. Okay. So this is one of my most favorite quotes. Leadership creates and changes culture. Management and administration merely act within it. So if someone asks you, are you a leader or a manager, the difference always to me is, well, a leader will create the desired culture, right? They change cultures. Or a manager just acts within it. Okay. For time, I'm going to quickly show what this is, and I can give you a model. It's my favorite model. The company commanders have seen this. The so what is of this is a model depicting the entirety of change to successfully implement mission command. What you're seeing here, what's this supposed to represent is this is like a iceberg. Obviously, as you know, the analogy, you mostly see this, but that's not where the most of the iceberg resides. It's under the water level, okay? What you're seeing here is the key artifacts, meaning when you look at an organization, this is what you see of it. You can actually see it and touch it. Think of a squad, think of a platoon, think of your company. You have artifacts. Artifacts would be coins. It would be some sort of thing on a wall. What a soldier says. When you give an award to somebody or whatever, or it's something tangible. You see that a lot. People mostly try to focus there and change that. Oh, I can put a new poster up. I can get a new coin. I can write a new commander's intent. I can issue another tax op. On and on and on and on and on. But why doesn't that ever change anything? Why isn't giving another tax op changing things? Not like anyone's going to, oh, a new tax op. I'm instantly going to change how I do things. We already know nobody reads them. Oh, a new coin. Holy shit. I'm now better, I'm going to change how I do things. Why doesn't it change things?
It doesn't mean don't believe in it.
Because what don't we address? Exactly, just what Major Brown said. This is what you have to address. Because this is where the cultural change occurs. For example, here you can't read it. You have beliefs and the underlying assumptions. These are people's underlying assumptions about things. For example, what you're not here is, for example, what you're reading here, underlying assumptions. Think about what soldiers think, leaders think about the nature of command. Do they believe or don't believe, exercise independent judgment, that they can assume great risk? Do you actually believe, is that assumption that leaders think? They can develop and mentor subordinates. Do you believe subordinates are capable of independent judgment? Let me give you an example. One of the things I hate, and I keep working on it, is I'll hear this all the time. Oh, fucking Joe, right? Fucking Joe. You want to see how he'll fuck it up? He'll fucking Joe. Dumb it down because fucking Joe. Who's ever heard that term? Yeah, fucking Joe. If Joe can fuck it up, it'll be that way. What is the underlying assumption there? What? Joe's an idiot. You have to dumb things down. Yeah? Now, in your military, I've been in 21 years. Think about it. 21 years, and you say, really? How many really, truly effed up privates and junior enlisted have I ever really known? I could probably think about 5, maybe 6. How many great, super intelligent, super capable privates, junior enlisted have I known? How many of you known? But what do we do then? What's our underlying assumption? Fucking Joe. And we do everything we do. National Guard, right? What's the underlying assumption about the National Guard? On and on and on, right? Who's ever heard the term, just the guard? You're just the guard. What's the underlying assumption? Would anyone argue that we're just the dark rifles? Would they or not? I know a lot of people do not think we are. How many great units have you known? How many fucked up active duty units have I known? It's not the unit, it's the people, right? It's the talent. Talent matters, on and on and on. But this is what I mean by underlying assumptions. In the Border Patrol, we work for Customs Border Protection, CBP. There's a term that stands for criticize, blame, punish. Right, that's the underlying assumption. If something goes wrong, it'll be criticized, blamed, and punished for it, or whatever. What I'm saying is you cannot change any of this until the basic underlying assumptions change. Then it moves up to what do your subordinates, you, believe? And I tell you what you believe is what comes out of your mouth. I've always said, like, language is the birthplace of creation. What you say out of your mouth will create it. Like our retention problem. You've heard me say this over and over. Do we have a retention problem in the National Guard, or in the Washington Army National Guard? Well, we do now. You know why? Because we spoke it into existence. We said it so many times it became a thing. Now we do have a retention problem. It became a thing because we spoke it into existence. Like the Marshmallow Man from freaking Ghostbusters. It became a thing because we believed it. But like here, what he talks about is beliefs and the nature command. His commanders, do you believe and tolerate mistakes and failures? Do you believe can you live with chaos? Timely decisions with imperfect information. Do you believe there's a duty to act, a bias for action? Subordinates, are they willing to take risks? Preserve freedom of action, responsibility linked to authority. And then on and on and on. And once you get after this is where you get into the actual changing. You'll actually see the change. You'll actually see leaders who are taking initiative. You'll actually see people who are hungry because they realize it's a profession that they're part of. This is where you'll actually be able to run in a culture that we described earlier, instead of saying what are the 6 principles of mission command, and we have to look them up on our phone because we don't know them, is that we are up in an organization that it has that. And so why I call this an LPD is because what I guess the onus is on all of us is, are we going to merely create that culture and change it, or are we going to merely act within it? And it's on all of us to, one, recognize what this is. Okay. So this is the world according to the U.S. Army, the future world. Win in a complex world, multi-domain battle, multi-complicated, asteroid. And we've got Space Force now because of who knows, right? It's all coming at us. Pandemics and hybrid warfare and weaponization of immigration and nuclear weapons, and now we've got hypersonic weapons, facial recognition, AI, right? This is on and on and on and on. This is what the future world that we're all supposed to go in and win in. That's what it says, right? Win in a complex world. What is the requirement for our subordinate leaders, you, in order to operate in that world? Is mission command, Offstrog tactique, is that still a viable philosophy? Yes or no? Why? Speed. We have to be faster. Say to the group. If you all, agree or disagree that mission command is the way we need to lead organizations, yeah or no? Okay. Is it still valid to win in this complex world where everything's going to come at us and everything's a threat, or, what they're trying to describe the future is? Okay. So how are we going to do it? Sit and listen to Broyles talk about a PowerPoint. How are you going to do it? It's on you and I, right? It's on you and I. And I would argue that it's the small things has to happen first. You can't do big things until you do small things. It's the way you and I talk first. It's stopping when someone says, fucking Joe. It's stopping when someone says, oh, you're just an astronaut, or this, or what, right. Change your vocabulary. Change your grammar first. That's easy to do. Can't you do that? I think we can do that. I think we can change our vocabulary, change our grammar. Talk like you're the first team. You bring it into existence. Talk like it. Expect it. Hold people to that standard that you expect them to be who you want them to be. It'll fucking change. Because you speak it into existence. That's why I love the company commander standards of performance. But this is where it gets hard because you have to will it into existence. Each one of you have to will it into existence. It will not be given to you. That's why I like the principles of mission command so much. Those active words. Build. Build a cohesive team. That's an active thing. On mutual trust, you have to fucking build it like you would build a house. It's going to take a lot of work. You're going to have to plan it. You just can't do it ad hoc. You have to think about how you're going to build this team. You got to think who's going to be on the team and how you're going to find their weakness, on and on and on. You have to build it. And you have to have mutual trust. You can't surge trust, folks. Create. You have to create a shared understanding. It's creating. I've tried to do that with the company commanders as much as I have. I have in my head kind of what I see this organization going. Well, they won't know it. I have to kind of create this. And I do it through pictures and talking to them and on and on and on. I have to create it. Remember, it doesn't exist. It's just nothing. This is all nothing until you put it on paper and describe it and give it, vocalize it and put it in a picture and talk it until you make it into being. That's why I like that word create. You have to will it into existence. Like the Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters. You have to make it a thing. You have to exercise discipline initiative. Just like a clean and jerk. Just like any other workout, Renegade Man Makers, all that. You have to practice it. It's going to be hard, and it scares the hell out of you. I know. I don't get it right all the time either. But you have to practice it. You have to practice giving commanders intent. You know why we give shitty commanders intent? You know why? Why? Because nobody wants to look like an ass. That's why. Because nobody wants to be courageous. That's exactly how I see it going out. What if you're wrong? What if people make fun of you? What if that little voice in everybody's head that you're playing with right now because you don't want to say anything because, what if I look bad and, always want to look good, that voice that you're playing with all the time? People love to live in the shadows. People love to be, ambiguous because you're never wrong. It takes a lot of freaking courage to say, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to look like. And you've got to practice it. One thing I admired the hell out of Molka, he had a lot of courage. He believed in something so much that he just made it into existence. Those were just ideas. And he was highly criticized for it. Yeah, if that was an NTC operation, I'm sure he wouldn't have survived command, right? If he briefed that as his car. All those OCTs would have said, oh yeah, bro, whatever, no go, get this guy out of here. On and on. Okay. All right, so in summary, that's the Battle of Königgrätz. So those of you going to go to the staff ride, it'll be what I want you to hone in on is the decision making, right? It's always about decisions, and not so much had Benedict went left when he should have went right. Okay, whatever. That's not as interesting as trying to understand why they made the decision that they made. And you're going to find out a lot of it is based on their underlying assumptions and their beliefs. That's what it's going to come down to. Most of the time, who underlying assumption and their beliefs. Molka went in there, he truly believed in his way he was going to do this. He believed in each other. He believed that second army was going to come around. He just knew it. On and on and on. And Benedict was, on and on. So as we go in, when you look, it's always going to be battle decisions. Okay. Sorry, I'm 11 minutes over. I'll wrap it up. Okay. Any point or anybody want to make? I know you guys are ready to get out of here and all that kind of thing. Does anyone want to bring up some questions about Königgrätz? I hope that was helpful. Yeah? Okay. Let's talk about our LPD going forward. So here's kind of my problem. Notice my version on infantry and the version I think, unfortunately, most of you bought. So I apologize, I didn't know there was two very different versions. I went through both of them. There are some big differences, but that's okay because I know what, I have clear commander's intent on how we're gonna do this. So there's a couple chapters in here that are very good still, very good, and we'll use those. But what we're gonna look at is since this last part is gonna be on infantry and for fires, how you support infantry, because that's your whole job is to support maneuver. For logistics, how do you support infantry and support winning reconnaissance? You're supposed to be the eyes of the infantry in order to close and destroy the enemy. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on infantry, and we're going to do it through the lens of different types of infantry. So for example, we're going to start with the German infantry, and we're going to examine where the stormtroops come. That's pretty influential, where they came up with a lot of their methods. We're going to read the Truppenfront, their leadership philosophy. So the first person, I'll put this out in a memorandum, just want to see where I'm going. So here's your warning order. Then we're going to take that. Then we're going to look at Russian infantry. And there's a really good chapter in here. It's called Germans, Stalin's Hammer, Hitler's Anvil. So we'll look at that chapter and a couple of things. We'll look at Russian infantry. We'll spend a long time looking at the Japanese infantry and how the U.S. fought the Japanese infantry. What I want you to glean on this is fill your well up on different methods. And I think we're going to do something with Liddell Hart and how his theoretically fought infantry. I got to find some. Anyway, I have to work on his stuff. But if you know of any of his writings, it would really help me out. So I want to read his stuff for the British infantry, his theory of the indirect approach and the light tactics. So if you have some of his stuff, that would really help me out if you can find it. But that's going to be our way ahead, and we'll focus on that. We'll kind of take parts of this, and I'll provide you the stuff to read, okay? Okay, with that, I appreciate your time. Sorry for being about 13 minutes over. We'll see you later. Hunt, Ready, Skilled.